Welcome back to Care to CEO, where we help caregivers and ordinary people become confident care business owners. If you've been following the series so far, then you know starting is one thing, but staying in the game is something else. Today, we're talking to Crystal about the unsexy but essential things that keep your business alive: your team, your systems, and your sanity. Crystal's been through it all: staffing meltdowns, system chaos, sleepless nights, and she's here to show you how to build a care business that doesn't fall apart when life hits. Hi, Crystal.
Hi. Oh my God, I'm so happy to be here. I really feel really reset and restored after coming back from the Beyonce concert. So, ready to go. Yes.
I love that. I am still on my recovery from the Beyonce concert
Right.
myself.
Right. Me too. Me too. That part for sure. But it was great. It was a great time. Of course, she overperformed. I mean, just completely past my expectations. So I had a great time. Would love to go see her again.
She owes us nothing.
Yes.
Superhuman.
Yes, I know, right?
But let's jump right in, right? Let's jump right in, Crystal. So let's talk a little bit about your staffing, because I know that this is something we previously talked about is not only super important, but a little bit complex too, and finding the right people can be complicated. So, what do most people get wrong about hiring for a care business?
So one thing people need to understand, staff really makes or breaks your business. I mean, it's everything. It's so essential. And I think one of the biggest mistakes is thinking we can just hire warm bodies. And I certainly have made this mistake, hiring a warm body instead of the right person for the job. A lot of new owners, again, guilty of this, are desperate to fill shifts. When you first start, that's what you need. You need someone there to take care of those individuals. And so you tend to say yes to anyone who has a license, anyone who can pass a background check. And that's really one of the mistakes that we make earlier on. But caregiving isn't just about credentials. It's most certainly about character, and I had to learn that the hard way many times. I've had staff show up late, fall asleep on the job, and even be disrespectful when you have to approach them about these things, even when they're the ones in the wrong. So I definitely learned the hard way that bad hires really cost more in the long run than just filling shifts. So that's something very essential. Now, 3.5 years later, almost 4 years later, we screen for values. I ask questions like, "Tell me about a time that you had to care for someone who didn't want your help." Because that happens a lot. So I really want to find out some real life experiences that uh, some of the hires have or the candidates have had in their past, because that's very important, and that gives me more insight. Gives me a lot more insight than any resume for sure. And this business is definitely more than just what's on your resume or what kind of credentials you have.
Absolutely. I think it's hard just hiring staff in general with any business can be complicated, but with this role that's so meaningful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's tough for everyone, I would say, but there's certainly a high turnover rate in the care industry. I would say for sure.
Absolutely. And when you started, knowing you as much as I know you now, I'm pretty sure the answer to this is going to be yes. But
Right.
when you started, were you trying to do everything yourself? And at what point did you realize, hey, like I need a team to grow this?
Most certainly, you know me pretty well now. I thought I could be the admin, the on-call recruiter, the transporter, everything at one time. I once left a baby shower just to go fill a shift by myself because there was no one else to do it. And these are the times really that I knew that this just isn't sustainable. I can't scale, I can't grow if I don't delegate. So I had to realize that at that point I wasn't building a business. I was burning myself out, honestly. So I think the shift came when I just started looking for the right support and just waiting patiently for it because it's not always on Indeed. It's not always from that referral. It's not always that ideal person you would have in your mind. Sometimes it meant that there were smaller profits up front, and that's how I was able to. But this is how I eventually was able to grow and get some longevity in the company.
Absolutely. And someone that is coming from your background as a caregiver, having to transition to being a boss and delegating things in itself, I could imagine it was probably a little difficult because it's a whole new world in which you're not just taking care of people, but now you're being in charge of this business and delegating tasks when you're used to doing it yourself.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, it's sad that a lot of people you'll find they don't care. You know what I mean? They don't have a hard time showing you that it's not my business. I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm just here for a job, for the money. And that quickly becomes apparent with many of the staff members that are there for the wrong reason. So again, I learned the hard way.
Yeah, that's definitely, I'm sure, very hard with a specific caregiving company. But now, when you're hiring, what are some qualities that you look for when you're interviewing someone to care for your clients?
So I mean, you don't need a degree to work in this field, but you do need empathy and empathy that also moves. So you need people who don't just care, but they care enough to act, when they see that an individual needs something. And I've been fortunate enough to have staff that have put systems in place that I couldn't even have thought of. Like, oh my God, because they care. They paid attention to what the individual needs, and they said, "Miss Crystal," there's a many of them call me that, I don't know why, but it's probably because 'cause I'm old enough to be their mother, maybe, I don't know. But they're like, I went ahead and I did this because I could see that, so and so needed this." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't have thought of that," you know? So, I would say, most certainly empathy, flexibility, oh my goodness, because yeah, you could be on shift and the person coming in something could have happened and they're running late. Maybe they can't come at all. So I need people who, because they care for the actual individuals, they're not going to get mad and upset and say, I quit or I can understand if it happened a lot, but, they understand that life happens and that this is a team effort. So I really look for people like that. And lastly, communication. Like, my goodness, if something's going on with you, just, let's talk about it. Let's work it out. I've had staff members that have some stuff going on at home, like or just in their personal lives and and it's affecting their job. And when they just kind of came to me about it, I didn't judge them or anything. I said, you know what, I think we can find out a way to work this out so that you can still do your job efficiently and you don't have to, quit or take a leave or whatever the case is. You know what I mean? Just I love when people will just communicate because it makes all of our lives easier and we really just want to work as a team anyway. So I want people with integrity, and because we serve individuals with intellectual disabilities and older foster care children and elderly, and you really have to show up even when things are difficult and hard. And people do that when they care in general. So I once hired someone who really didn't have any experience, but in her interview, she almost had me in tears because she told me about how she was raising a child with autism, and she knew firsthand, how much it was important to advocate for this individual, especially being that it was her child. And so she actually turned out to be one of my best hires. So, it just goes back to show that staffing is very important.
Yeah, and I think in this realm, like you said, you don't particularly need a degree, but just being a particular kind of person with empathy and compassion and The ability to communicate and also be transparent, I think would go
Yeah,
so far, especially people that I feel like do go into these roles come from a background like similar to you or even myself that have had like difficult experiences that's how people tend to build so much empathy that it in a way is kind of natural that they may have things going
absolutely,
on, and I think that
absolutely,
that's something about you that's wonderful coming from that background is like you have the ability to also be compassionate as a CEO and
right,
be a great boss for employees that may have things going on.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I think
I
it's just a strong
yeah, I
circular.
try to be very well. I don't really have to try. I am relatable to many of my staff members as well. You know, I come from backgrounds similar to theirs, single motherhood, you know, challenges that I had to overcome. So I try to always be understanding and not judgmental.
Absolutely. And then in terms of running a business, hiring and staffing is obviously something super important. But beyond that, let's talk systems because when you started, I'm sure you were overwhelmed just trying to organize and get things together. So, what were the first things you put in place to stay organized? And what do you
Uh,
use today?
so at first, I was doing things like piecing together Google Sheets and handwritten notes and group texts, and it was pretty chaotic. I mean, we got through it, but it was pretty chaotic. I missed a lot of deadlines. I forgot birthdays. I almost lost contracts due to this. I've been chewed out by caseworkers for not responding in a timely manner. And, you know, I just had to really start searching for better systems because it's key. It was difficult, and I went through a lot. You know, I've gone through many of them. Uh, because then you find the next best thing. But now, you know, we we use digital across the board for the most part. You know, we don't need all that paper laying around. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that in some cases it can be useful as well. But you know, AI, oh my goodness, digital tools, anything from scheduling platforms to document storage, payroll, and incident tracking. We use digital systems for these things, and they are a godsend. So, and I think systems don't just help you stay organized, but I think they really help protect the business in general from legal risk and burnout and even complaint.
And then in terms of talking about those systems and using different ones, is there one system that you really use the most, or is there a system that has any kind of all-in-one different functionalities that you like, or are they all still kind of spread out?
So I will say I went through so many systems. You know, like I said, I have friends who are also agency owners, and people recommended different systems to me. So what we have now is Access Care, and it really allows the streamlining. I would say streamlining for your business. But we are going to transition again. I don't even know how many times this makes, but to Britco, and it's a reporting and documentation system, and it was especially designed for home care agencies. So it gives the capability to keep track of staff clocking in and out on their app, and manager reviews, and daily attendance, and documentation for you know when something needs to be reported or an incident happens. Um, Also, you know, it takes away having all that paperwork laying around or having the ability to get lost. We're also able to check in and keep communication with the families as well. So I really love that. And I feel like this structure really gives us more visibility and consistency, especially if investors were looking, you know, to maybe work with us. They look at a company's longevity and their systems that they have in place. So, yeah, I think we've come a long way. We've come a long way.
Absolutely. And if our listeners are on the verge of starting out or thinking about starting or recently started, I'm sure that that's really, really knowledge like that's really solid information for them to have because they can look into that specific system without having to piece things together and likely will eliminate some of those day, early struggle headaches. They can kind of take that advice and look into like all in one platforms or the system you mentioned to help them in their early starting days. And now your days, I'm sure, are much different than they were in the beginning. So, what does your day to day operation look like now? From shift scheduling to client documentation?
So I would say the fact that I started putting in place systems, or we as a company did, my team and I think that it helped give me back peace of mind. I used to work 90 hours a week and still feel like I have accomplished nothing. But now, I can go on vacation, spend an evening with my children, and know that things are handled. I think that even though systems do require some discipline, when done well, they really help sustain the business, uh, even when you fall short, which can happen sometimes. For example, when my daughter had surgery, I didn't have to call staff and call people personally. My system sent out alerts, shifts were picked up automatically, and the business didn't miss a beat. So that's CEO peace.
Absolutely. That's kind of the ideal situation where you find a system to help you work smarter and not harder. It just kind of helps you coast while things are going along. So that's definitely something important to find the right one, like the right fit. And now as a CEO and being the boss and having staff, how do you keep your staff motivated, especially when it's not just about a paycheck, it's about real people's lives? Are there any specific things that you do to help them with motivation?
Yeah, I think I really try to pour into staff. I have personal conversations with them pretty frequently. I host monthly recognition, shout out events. I just give them gifts for any and everything, bonuses. I host team prayer calls, especially when times are rough. I really try to create an environment where we can come together as often as we can and celebrate just getting through the week. Another example is for instance, I had a staff member's mother pass recently, and I mean, it really, she's one of my, I love her so much. She is one of my day ones, and I saw the toll it was really taking on her, and I know how she is. She doesn't want to let me down either, and I felt like, oh my goodness, you have been so amazing for this company, and just such a big part of this team that I put together a gift basket. I arranged so that she didn't have to, come in to work and I could find someone to work her shift and gave her.
No, that's amazing though that you as a CEO have that transparency and openness with your staff members or some of your staff members that I think that that's just so incredible. I know I've had jobs where I was going through hard times where I had to leave the job because I didn't have the support, whether I was, and it's hard. It's hard to have that. So
That's and that's so sad. Right, it really is, and that's why I really try to create an environment where we can work as a team and rally together as much as possible because that's really what it's all about. And my staff knows that they could come to me if they wanted to do this. If you wanted to be an agency owner, or if you wanted to be an independent provider, which is just where you're kind of licensed, but you can take care of a certain amount of hours. You can provide services for a certain amount of hours per week. They know they can come to me for that. They know that I'd say, "Hey, okay, let's do it," because I've done it. I've helped some of my
that's
staff members
amazing.
get their agencies. So I have no issue with that, or whatever, yeah, or whatever goals they have for that matter. And I really try to keep that openness because the idea isn't, just for me to rise. It's for all of us to rise. So if there's something they have they have a goal, I encourage them to come to me. I have a staff member whose daughter is a gymnast, and I'm very supportive of her because she is so good. And if I need to, I'll hold fundraisers to get her to some of these events that I know could be pretty costly. And like I said, we really operate. It's good when you can operate as a family. Now, that doesn't mean everyone on the team is always that way, but it's certainly the environment that I encourage and the type of culture that we are trying to implement.
Absolutely, and I having that dynamic at work, I'm sure your staff members not only appreciate it and value it so much, but I'm sure it makes them want to even be better and do more because when you feel valued and appreciated as an employee, that's something that's hard to find. So the
Hmm.
appreciation and the value for that is
Yes.
immeasurable. Like it's just beyond words to really have that experience. So that's great, especially being it's hard to find the right staff. The fact that you're nurturing them so much is incredible. I wanna come work for you. I'm gonna move and come be part of your staff. This is where I wanna work, I think, actually. But that's great, especially even being
Well, come on. We would love to have you.
especially even going above and beyond the way you do and holding fundraisers, and that's just it's amazing.
And then thank you. And we could go see
Yes.
Beyonce afterwards sometime.
We might need a fundraiser to go see Beyonce.
Right, right,
I mean,
exactly.
that would be good team morale, I would say.
Seriously, you're giving me ideas here. You're giving me
I'm just
ideas.
saying, it wouldn't hurt. But beyond keeping your staff motivated and finding the right people and really nurturing those relationships, when it comes to logistics, what are some of the go-to tools that you've implemented, whether it be a platform or just a system that you really recommend running for a care business?
Okay, so at the top of my list, Care Smarts 360, Alea Care. These are for scheduling, time tracking, EVV, Google Workspace, of course, for forms and just team updates, things like that. Slack or GroupMe, so that the team can communicate quickly, especially when you're starting out. Oh my gosh, my all-time favorite, Canva. Oh my goodness. For branding, flyers, professional forms. I cannot believe how much I do in Canva now, because sometimes I have to do lease agreements, when I get new clients in. And I mean, lease agreements right there on Canva. I can't believe how many forms, how many templates are on Canva. I had no idea. So I can easily do hours on Canva without even knowing it. And lastly, I would say QuickBooks or Gusto for payroll and taxes. That is definitely where I started. So because I think it's pretty easy to use. So definitely for your payroll
Awesome.
needs. It's a great place to
I
start.
actually I've used Gusto before, and I didn't know they were still around, but I remember them. They were very, very friendly, user-friendly, straightforward system to use.
Yes, very user friendly. Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, I do have a planner that I created myself so you can get outside of your head sometimes and strategize. So, and I will be sharing how to get that
Awesome.
as well.
Now, for our listeners who are just getting started, if you had to choose one system that they should set up this week to really ground themselves and build on and really save them stress later on, which one would you pick?
Okay. I first want to let staff know to, if you're planning to do this, be smart. Set this stuff up now. Like you really will save yourself a lot of time and headache. Set it up now. I still like Access Care very much. That is the system we are currently using, and I would say Access Care because there's so much you can do right inside of that and have access to documentation, uh, reports, and attendance, and all sorts of other things. And so I think that that is one that's very user friendly and easy to start. And and I always think about, what if you were to get audited, like in your first year, you were to get like a review. If you were using a system like Access Care and everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, like your staff's reporting and they're clocking in and out. Well, all the information is right there in the system. So it's just a matter of print it out and give it to the reviewer. You know what I mean? It's so much time saved when you use the system. So, but there's so many. Just research one that's best for you, because there's a ton. That's why I've gone through so many.
Mhm. No, but it's great to have your expertise to really help people set up for success from day one, because I mean, working in the tech industry the last few years, I've worked with companies that were startups and they grow to a certain point where they don't have the right systems in place.
Right.
And
You don't have, oh my gosh, and in my case, I did not expect to grow as quickly as I did. Like, I never would have thought. I was expecting to maybe stay around, having one client for, I don't know, I was thinking probably a couple years. Yeah, that did not happen. That did not happen. I mean, I got calls immediately, and it really was because we were doing good work, but the clients were growing faster than I could build the team and the
right,
systems, or put systems in place. So, yeah, just spend a lot of time strategizing that, and putting things in place.
absolutely.
Now, that's a lesson I had to learn the hard way, because I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know at that time. Uh, but now I'm telling you, go and research and find the right systems for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, great to just expect to grow and have that solid foundation, because having to backpedal
Yeah.
and figure those things out while you already have
Oh
clients
my
reliant
goodness.
on you.
Wow. Yeah. And believe me, I did have to. I had to go and backpedal. So I had to go back and recreate and fix the mess that some of the messes that I feel were made. Some of the, from just lack of knowledge, lack of resources, even lack of mentorship. So, and then again, that's why I'm here in this space, to really help guide others so they don't spend so much time, making those mistakes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for always being such an amazing resource and mentor for everyone listening. This was a masterclass in what actually keeps care businesses alive: staff, system, survival. And if you got any value from this, do us a favor, share it with someone building their care business right now. And remember,
Thank
don't
you.
have to build it
Yes.
alone. Head to care2ceo.com, CARETO CEO.com, to join Crystal's mentorship circle, filled with so much valuable information. And next week, we have an exciting topic. We're going to dive into minority entrepreneurship and why caregivers of color are already positioned to win in this industry. So don't miss it. And thank you again, Crystal, for this masterclass. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you again for having me, and thank all the audience for joining us today. And I will see you next time.
Thanks. See you next week.